On this Monday night, coronavirus confirmed in Canada. One official case, another presumptive case. Their connection.
This new case isn't surprising.
Plus, new questions over how the virus spreads. Scouring for clues in the Kobe Bryant helicopter crash.
It's a logistical nightmare.
The chopper's final moments in the air. The liberation of Auschwitz. 75 years later, the immeasurable pain for survivors.
Everyone turned their back on us.
And the mission to educate the next generation.
We cannot allow history to repeat itself.
And honorable mention, one man's lifelong dream fulfilled by the Mounties.
Global National with Dawna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. It is now official. Canada has its first confirmed case of the new strain of coronavirus. A man in his mid-50s in Toronto. His wife is also suspected of being ill and is awaiting test results. They are both in isolation and both recently traveled from Wuhan, China, the epicenter of this coronavirus outbreak.
I'd like to stress that since arriving in Toronto, this individual has been in self-isolation. As such, the risk to Ontarians remains low.
Canadian health authorities say the greatest concern is people who have symptoms of the illness and have traveled to Wuhan or the surrounding Hubei province, where the greatest quarantine in history is underway. That is the epicenter, and it's where the vast majority to have contracted the virus live. The latest numbers from China, there are more than 4,100 confirmed cases now in that country and 106 deaths, most of them in and around Wuhan. There are concerns the number of people carrying the virus but not yet showing symptoms could be far higher. Researchers at Hong Kong University estimate 43,000 people in Wuhan could be carrying it. China's premier met frontline workers in Wuhan today and promised to send 2,500 more medical workers to help. And this is day 4 of the rushed construction of a special hospital in Wuhan, just to house up to 1,000 patients with the virus. There are reports it can be spread by people who are not showing any symptoms, which raises questions about the ability to contain it. That's one of many remaining unknowns about this virus, as Heather Urix-West reports.
Canadian health officials say 2 Canadians have become ill with the new coronavirus linked to a deadly outbreak in China.
The 2 cases are, as you know, a married couple who arrived at Pearson International Airport on January 22nd.
A man in his 50s, the country's first confirmed case, remains at Sunnybrook Hospital in Toronto. His wife, now considered a presumed case, has a milder form of the illness and is in isolation at home.
As of today, she has not been in need of the same acute hospital care required by her husband, who also remains stable.
The Public Health Agency of Canada expects to see more cases in the coming days. 19 other patients are being tested for the new strain in Ontario alone. But officials say the risk of an outbreak in Canada remains low.
That is the primary message that I want to give Canadians. The risk of contracting coronavirus is low. And I think there are risks of contracting other viruses that are here in Canada that we know a lot about that are much higher.
More public health resources are being deployed to the Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver airports to help screen passengers arriving from China. Anyone returning from Wuhan is being asked if they are ill. Chinese health officials revealed over the weekend that this virus could spread before patients become symptomatic. Canada's chief public health officer says she sees no evidence to support that claim.
We certainly need more data to really evaluate the veracity of that claim, because certainly it would be extremely unusual for something like that to happen.
But the uncertainty surrounding the spread of the new strain of the virus is prompting concern.
I'm looking for the face mask to protect myself and my family.
In Winnipeg, medical masks have become difficult to find, even though health officials believe those kinds of precautions aren't necessary right now. Canada's health minister says she's asked her department to set up a federal 1-800 number to answer questions and clear up confusion about the illness, as the global medical community learns more about the new strain and its spread with each passing day. Heather Urix-West, Global News, Calgary.
Fans of former NBA legend Kobe Bryant are still reeling today. Bryant was on his private helicopter with his 13-year-old daughter and 7 others, including kids, parents, and a coach. They were going to his youth basketball academy in California when the helicopter crashed. It was foggy when it happened, and today investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board asked the public to send photos of the skies at the time. They said the helicopter was climbing to avoid a cloud layer. It was not required to carry a black box, and it did not have one. The accident scene, they said, is quite devastating, and it will take time to recover the bodies. This was the heartbreaking scene at Bryant's basketball academy when they heard the news. The children took a knee when they realized Bryant wouldn't be coaching anymore and his daughter wouldn't be playing. In Los Angeles, where Bryant played his entire 20-year career, memorials with flowers and candles are growing outside the Staples Center. And in New York City tonight, the Empire State Building is lit up in purple and yellow, the colors of the LA Lakers, as a tribute to the superstar. Today, the Basketball Hall of Fame joined the rest of the world mourning the loss, announcing Bryant will be the first inductee of the 2020 class. Here's Mike Drolet.
Tonight is for Kobe.
On the music industry's biggest night, the tributes poured in for Kobe Bryant.
And we're literally standing here heartbroken.
A basketball star whose appeal went beyond his sport. At makeshift memorials and on the air, tears came easily.
I just don't have a lot to say. The news is just devastating to everybody.
As sports fans mourn the loss of the 41-year-old, investigators combed through the wreckage for clues as to how one of the safest helicopters in the air crashed into the side of a mountain in California.
It's a logistical nightmare in a sense because the crash site itself is not easily accessible.
What they already know is that the fog was so thick the Los Angeles Police Department had grounded its choppers, and that the pilot of Bryant's chopper had been given special clearance to fly in bad conditions.
I heard a helicopter flying, I felt like it was flying way too low, and then all of a sudden I hear like a thud noise, and then there was nothing.
Rescue personnel reported all 9 people on board had died, including Bryant's 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. Also on board, college baseball coach John Bolton, his wife Carrie, and their daughter Alyssa, 13-year-old Peyton Chester and her mom Sarah, and girls basketball coach Christina Mauser, and the pilot.
On the move with the jumper.
Bryant retired nearly 4 years ago after a celebrated career to spend more time with his wife and 4 daughters, but he was arguably busier than ever.
You gave a 6-year-old boy his Laker dream. And I'll always love you for it.
Winning an Oscar in 2018 for Best Animated Short.
I mean, as basketball players, we're really supposed to shut up and dribble, but I'm glad we do a little bit more than that.
That he did, which in part explains his broad appeal and the sadness that's overwhelmed so many of his fans. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
New information has emerged that could be a game changer in the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump, and it comes from a man who used to be very close to the president. John Bolton, his former national security advisor, has written a book. It's not out yet, but part of it has been leaked to the New York Times, and it undercuts a key part of President Trump's defense. Now, as Jackson Proskow explains, the Democrats are hoping Bolton will become a star witness at the impeachment trial.
I haven't seen a manuscript, but I can tell you nothing was ever said to John Bolton.
Taking up his own defense, President Donald Trump denied explosive new claims from his former national security advisor John Bolton, contained in a looming tell-all book. According to the New York Times, Bolton writes that Trump told him to freeze $400 million in military aid to Ukraine until officials there helped with the investigations Trump wanted into his rival Joe Biden. That directly contradicts the president's ongoing impeachment defense.
The pause on security assistance was distinct and unrelated to investigations.
He's highly respected by everybody in this room.
Once a close Trump ally, Bolton left the White House late last year. White House officials have testified he was aware of the scheme to pressure Ukraine and angrily called it a drug deal.
I think at this stage it's pretty fair to say that John Bolton has a relevant testimony to provide.
Whether Bolton is allowed to testify remains an open question.
The facts of the case remain the same. There is nothing new here.
The Republican majority has so far blocked attempts to hear from witnesses. Several would have to break ranks to change that.
We have a witness with first-hand evidence of the president's actions for which he is on trial. He is ready and willing to testify. How can Senate Republicans not vote to call that witness.
Jackson, pre-orders are already being taken for Bolton's book. Do we know how this explosive stuff in it was leaked?
Well, Dawna, an advanced copy of the book had apparently been given to national security officials for vetting, as is standard practice with someone in Bolton's situation. But the question many Republicans have is whether the White House knew about the allegations contained within the book, and if so, whether they kept this all quiet as Republican members were out there offering this vigorous defense of the president on TV. Dawna?
All right, lots more to emerge on this. Jackson Proskow in Washington, thanks. Just days before the third anniversary of the shooting at a Quebec City mosque, lawyers are arguing over the prison sentence for the gunman. Alexandre Bissonnette's lawyer and Crown prosecutors are both appealing the sentence. Last year, he was given life in prison with no possibility of parole for 40 years. In January of 2017, he stormed into a Quebec City mosque during evening prayers, killing 6 men and wounding several others. Bissonnette's lawyer argues that sentence is too harsh and that the crimes were not motivated by prejudice against Muslims. Prosecutors say Bissonnette should not be eligible for parole for 50 years, considering the seriousness of the crimes. Bissonnette was not in court today, and a decision is not expected for some time. Well, there are times when words cannot express, cannot do justice. And that's the case at a ceremony in southern Poland today. 75 years ago, on January 27, 1945, the Soviet Red Army liberated the sick and starving survivors of Auschwitz. The scale and the horror of what the Nazis did was and is unimaginable. Today, there were prayers and tears and a warning that the evil that led to the Holocaust still lurks. Redmond Shannon reports.
The pain is as clear today as it was 75 years ago. More than 200 survivors made the trip back to Auschwitz, all wearing blue and white striped scarves and hats, just like the prisoner uniforms at the most deadly of all the Nazi death camps, a place where 1.1 million people were murdered, most of them Jews. Auschwitz didn't just fall from the sky, Marian Turski told fellow survivors and world leaders. By that he meant there had been a slow creep of anti-Semitism across Europe leading up to the Holocaust.
When European Jews begged the world for a safe harbor, somewhere to go, the entire world turned its back on them.
World Congress of Jews President Ronald Lauder says open hostility toward Jews has returned in a way he never could have imagined.
In 2020, we hear the same lies the Nazis used so effectively in their propaganda. Jews control everything. We hear this madness online, in the media, and even within democratic governments.
Among the government leaders present was Hungary's Viktor Orban. He has referred to expat Jewish billionaire George Soros as dishonest and crafty, tropes used against Jews for generations. Countries across Europe have seen marked increases in anti-Semitic crimes in recent years. One Jewish Canadian living in Germany says he no longer wears his kippah skullcap in public.
It just doesn't feel as anywhere near as comfortable as safe being Jewish in Berlin as it did when I came in 2017.
Aaron Solomon says since the deadly synagogue attack in Germany last fall, he's noticed more security near Jewish landmarks.
There's this old Jewish saying that you always need to have that suitcase packed, and we always physically have that suitcase packed here in Germany.
As their numbers dwindle, these survivors fear Europe's collective memory of the Holocaust is fading too. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
As Redmond mentioned, the number of survivors is dwindling. Coming up, how and why the next generation is keeping their stories alive. Plus, doping decision. A Canadian canoeing champ gets some welcome news.
Hello.
Helping the community.
Nothing matters outside of that room. The only thing that matters is that person on the table.
Giving back.
We provide about 30,000 to 40,000 meals to people in need every single month.
I'm going to bike from Vancouver to Halifax, but it's so much more than that. It's meeting with families and giving them that hope.
Making a difference.
We're just trying to provide these breakthroughs for these kids because I think it's in all of our DNA. We're supposed to do things for other people.
Everyday Hero on Global National.
Another Tory MP is in the running for the leadership. Aaron O'Toole from Ontario made it official by releasing a video.
I'm Aaron O'Toole, and I'm running to unite Conservatives on the path to victory.
Today, O'Toole was in Alberta. He says that province is a priority for him. He's vowing to fight for jobs and defend Canada from what he calls the radical left. This is O'Toole's second attempt at becoming Tory leader. He ran in 2017 when Andrew Scheer won. The party is set to pick its new leader on June 27th. And MPs were back to work in the House of Commons today after a lengthy winter break. The first test for the minority government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is ratifying the new NAFTA agreement. The Liberals are preparing to table legislation to ratify the deal, also known as CUSMA. It could be a bumpy road. They need support from at least one other party to pass any bill. The NDP and the Bloc Québécois are stalling for now, not committing to passing the legislation quickly. The Conservatives say they want more clarity on the impact the deal will have on industries like forestry and agriculture. One of Canada's top Olympic medal hopefuls has been cleared of doping. Canoeist Laurence Vincent-Lapointe convinced an international panel that she did not knowingly take the banned muscle-building drug Ligandrol. The tribunal ruled her positive test was caused by third-party contamination. Vincent-Lapointe can now return to training and can still qualify for the Olympic debut of women's canoe sprint at the Tokyo Games this summer. Ahead, frightening flight, a passenger plane forced to take an unexpected detour.
You're watching Global National.
Oh my God, really cannot!
This remarkable scene happened in Iran. A passenger plane crash landed on the runway of a nearby airport and then skidded onto a city highway, but remained intact and people were able to climb out. Only 2 of the 144 people on board suffered injuries. The plane had traveled from Tehran, and according to Iranian media reports, the pilot was unable to deploy the landing gear. Some heartbreaking images in the Mediterranean Sea tonight as the worsening security situation in Libya is prompting more people to risk their lives getting to Europe. Nearly 500 migrants, many suffering hypothermia and dehydration, were rescued from the water over the weekend. The Ocean Viking, one of 2 private rescue ships in the Mediterranean, ended up with double the number of people it has capacity for. Almost 40% of those rescued are children under the age of 18, and the youngest is just 6 months old. More trouble for one of the Queen's sons, Prince Andrew. A prosecutor in New York City says the prince has not followed through on his pledge to help in the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking case.
To date, Prince Andrew has provided zero cooperation.
Jeffrey Berman says the FBI contacted Prince Andrew's lawyers about interviewing him, but have not heard back. Investigators are talking to individuals connected to Epstein about an alleged sex trafficking operation of underage girls. In an interview last year, the prince, who was a friend of Epstein's, said he was willing to help with any law enforcement agency and their investigation. There are calls to boycott a new British coin created, the government says, as Britain enters the post-Brexit era. The problem is both about politics and punctuation. The new 50-pence coin bears the slogan, peace, prosperity, and friendship with all nations. But people like British author Sir Philip Pullman say the Brexit coin is missing an Oxford comma and should be boycotted by all literate people. The Oxford comma should be used after the word prosperity. Some are so incensed about both the punctuation and the coin's claim, they say they'll refuse to carry it. Next, the ongoing efforts to keep the stories of Holocaust survivors alive.
Watch the award-winning newscast that covers and uncovers the stories that affect Canadians. Global National with Dawna Friesen.
They are the last living witnesses to the horrors of the Holocaust. And at Auschwitz today, on the 75th anniversary the Nazi death camp was liberated, the focus was on the survivors. This may be the last time so many gather in one place. Many who live in Canada, as well as their descendants, are trying to keep their stories alive. Abigail Bimman looks at what's being done and why it's so important.
I appeared naked in front of this Dr. Mengele.
Richard Lowey's father, Leo, survived Auschwitz. 15-year-old Leo was a twin, experimented on daily by the infamous Dr. Mengele, known as the Angel of Death. Leo lived until 2002.
I was asked to present my dad's story called Leo's Journey,
Now, on the 75th anniversary of the death camp's liberation, Richard released a new film online where he narrates his father's experience, Leo's journey, in my father's words.
These survivors came up and they started hugging me and thanking me and appreciating the fact that they have the feeling that the story will continue after they're gone.
It's already being offered as a resource for teachers in British Columbia, and Richard plans to take his father's story around the world.
Even though I'm old, I am one of the youngest survivors.
Survivors who are still able to share their stories directly say educating the next generation is paramount.
The youth that we speak to today is the last generation who will actually meet a person who survived.
Especially as Canada and the world face an increase in anti-Semitism.
The desire to recognize that these signs are around us everywhere and that we cannot allow history to repeat itself.
As long as I am able to, I am committed to do that, because I think it's absolutely vitally important that people should understand and listen to witnesses.
Out of 150 people in his extended family, Pinchas Guter was one of just 5 to survive the Holocaust.
I lost my parents and my twin sister.
He was the first survivor to take part in an interactive project by the USC Shoah Foundation, answering hundreds and hundreds of questions so visitors can virtually speak with him close to a real conversation.
The most important things that is very close to my heart is to educate the young people.
On Holocaust Remembrance Day, he's both thankful and sad. There's a complex mix of emotions.
We call it liberation, but Holocaust survivors were never actually liberated because you live with the Holocaust inside you all the time.
Doing all he can to make the phrase "never again" a reality. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Dawna Friesen. Tonight's Here Canada is a special moment for a man from Manitoba whose only dream in life was to be an RCMP officer.
Congratulations, Mr. Russell. You're now an honorary member of the RCMP.
Back in 1951, when he was 20, Jack Russell had been accepted into the RCMP but had to decline because his family needed him home in Elva, Manitoba. Well, now, with just days to live, his family wanted to make Jack's wish come true, and so did the RCMP. We salute you too, Jack. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.